If you took the DNA out of just one of your cells, like literally just pulled it out and stretched it, you'd be looking at this 2-meter-long fractal antenna.
Yeah, it's massive.
Right. And that tiny biological antenna is vibrating at roughly 100 billion times a second.
Yeah.
It's actively interacting with light itself.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. So I want you to imagine millions of those antennas inside your skeleton right now.
Yeah.
Because, you've probably heard people talk about raising your frequency or like sending good vibes.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
It's a total buzzword. And usually when we hear it, we immediately put it into this purely emotional or spiritual box. Like we think of it as a mood or maybe just a temporary feeling you get after a really good meditation session.
Right, like a fleeting state of mind.
Exactly. But today's deep dive into this massive stack of biophysics articles, translated research notes, and quantum biology papers, it is going to completely flip that idea on its head. Our mission today is to show you that raising your frequency is not just a mood. It is a literal biological hardware update. It's a physical engineering process that is happening inside your body.
It is a fundamentally physical process. And I mean, to understand why, we have to look at one of the baseline rules of the universe, which is entropy.
Good, dreaded entropy.
Right. In thermodynamics, entropy is this relentless flow toward decay, disorder, and chaos. Like left to its own devices, everything breaks down.
An abandoned house crumbles, an unmaintained engine rusts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. The natural flow of the universe is constantly trying to lower your frequency and break down your biological structure. So when we talk about raising your frequency, what we are really talking about is nudge entropy.
Nudge entropy, I love that term.
Yeah, it's a literal biological resistance against that universal decay. It's not about finding some passive floating state of peace. It's an active, highly active biological rebellion to maintain absolute structural order in your cells.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we are waging a literal biological rebellion against the decay of the universe, we need a serious power source. We need the hardware for it.
We do.
And I think most of us, if someone asks what powers our body, we'd just say our blood.
Sure, yeah.
Blood carries oxygen, it carries fuel. But as I was reading through the research, I realized we are completely overlooking where our real electromagnetic power comes from. And it's our skeleton.
Yeah, we tend to think of our bones as just like the scaffolding that keeps us from collapsing into a puddle on the floor.
Just dead sticks inside of us.
Exactly. But mechanically and scientifically, our bones and our teeth are made of these incredibly dense calcium hydroxyapatite crystals.
Crystals. Literally crystals in our body.
Actual crystals. And these crystals operate on a principle called the Piezoelectric Effect. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, yeah, like in watches and stuff.
Right. So when you apply mechanical pressure to a piezoelectric crystal, it forcefully deforms the atomic structure just enough to squeeze out an electrical charge. So, through simply walking, maintaining strict posture, or doing specific physical movements under the weight of gravity, you are literally generating electricity.
So I was trying to wrap my head around the difference between the cardiovascular system and this skeletal system.
Yeah.
And it hit me. If blood is the gasoline going into the engine to keep the biological machine alive, then the piezoelectric system in our bones is like the alternator and the spark plugs.
Well, that's a great way to put it.
It's the electrical ignition system.
Oh.
But wait, if gravity and pressure are what charge this crystal battery, what happens when you remove gravity? Is this why astronauts lose bone density in zero gravity?
That is a very astute connection. Yeah, without the constant mechanical pressure of gravity compressing those calcium hydroxyapatite crystals, the piezoelectric current stops.
The hardware goes completely dormant.
Yes. And when the electrical charge disappears, the bone literally begins to dissolve.
Because it's not being told to stay together.
Right. The structural integrity is no longer being electrically signaled to maintain itself.
That is wild.
What's fascinating here is how ancient builders seem to intuitively grasp this piezoelectric technology.
Oh, you mean like with the temples?
Exactly. If you look at ancient temples around the world, they are heavily constructed with quartz and granite.
Which are both highly piezoelectric stones.
Highly piezoelectric. The architecture isn't just aesthetic. Those structures act as massive external amplifiers for the internal biological crystals of the people walking inside them.
That is just incredible. You walk into a temple, and the building itself is a giant resonant amplifier for the electrical charge your own skeleton is generating.
That's the idea.
But hold on. If my bones are generating all this electrical voltage, Just from me walking around, where is that current actually going?
Good question.
Like, it can't just spark in the bone and stay there. It needs a highly conductive medium to travel through the rest of the body.
Right. It requires a specialized network. And that network is water.
Water.
But, and this is crucial, we are not talking about the liquid water you drink from a glass. The water inside our cells exists in a completely different phase. It's known in biophysics as the fourth phase of water, or exclusion zone water, EZ water.
EZ water, yeah.
Chemically, it rearranges itself into H3O2. It actually ceases to be a liquid and becomes a dense, gel-like substance that forms a perfect honeycomb hexagon crystal structure.
Okay, but how does water just become a crystal gel inside of us? That sounds crazy.
Well, when water is exposed to certain biological surfaces and infrared light, which, by the way, your body constantly produces as heat,
Right.
the water molecules naturally separate their electrical charges. The negative charge builds up in this honeycomb structure, and the positive protons get pushed out.
So it's basically a battery.
It literally turns your cellular water into a biological battery that stores energy. And it's also a fiber optic cable that transmits data.
That is so cool.
So when biophysicists talk about a cell having a high frequency, it literally means this crystalline water structure is perfectly intact. It allows your biological CPU to overclock and process data flawlessly at near the speed of light.
Okay, but I noticed the research also highlighted what happens when that structure breaks down.
Yeah, that's the dark side of it.
Things like chronic stress, processed diets, heavy artificial radiation. They destroy that beautiful hexagonal structure. It creates what the researchers call liquid chaos.
Liquid chaos, yes. And when water loses its crystalline structure, the electrical frequency generated by your bones hits a wall. It hits resistance.
Because the cables are fried.
Exactly. The energy just can't flow. And in basic physics, when electrical energy hits resistance, it dissipates as heat.
Oh, wow.
Biologically, that heat manifests as systemic inflammation, cellular stress, and eventually disease.
So to be clear, if my internal cellular water is chaotic and polluted, I could be the most spiritually enlightened person in the world, sitting on a mountaintop having purely positive thoughts.
Right.
But my biological data transfer is still going to lag. It's like having a state-of-the-art supercomputer, but you're forcing it to run on a 1990s dial-up internet connection.
That's a perfect analogy. It is a structural roadblock.
Yeah.
You can run the best mental software possible, but if the physical cables are degraded, the signal will constantly buffer.
It's going to buffer.
Raising your frequency is largely about maintaining this pristine superconductor state in your cellular water so that information flows through you without any static.
Okay, so we have the spark plugs, which are the bones generating electricity.
Yep.
We have the fiber optic cables, which is the H3O2 water. But, antennas need a specific shape to catch a signal out of the air.
They do.
So what is the actual shape of this skeletal antenna, and what exact signal is it trying to tune into?
To understand the shape, we have to look at fractal geometry. Nature is relentlessly efficient. It always chooses the path of least resistance.
Makes sense.
So the collagen fibers and the microcrystals inside our bones are not arranged randomly. They are woven in a precise spiral, a helix pattern, that follows the exact lines of mechanical stress placed on the bone.
A spiral.
Yeah.
Like DNA.
Exactly like DNA. And this spiral utilizes the golden ratio, which is the exact same mathematical dynamic that dictates how the arms of a galaxy orbit a central black hole or how a hurricane forms.
A microscopic galaxy simulation inside our bones. That is beautiful. But from an engineering perspective, why that specific spiral shape?
It comes down to a principle in physics called impedance matching.
Impedance matching, okay.
When the electrical resistance, the impedance of two systems perfectly matches, energy can transfer between them with zero loss. Because our bone's internal spiral geometry perfectly matches the macrospiral geometry of the natural universe, our skeleton acts as a perfectly tuned receiver.
It just syncs up.
Exactly. It absorbs cosmic radiation, electromagnetic waves, and environmental data seamlessly.
Now, I was reading the section about where this biological data actually comes from, and I have to admit, when I first read the phrase morphogenetic field, I almost threw the notes out the window.
It's a lot to take in.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel. What exactly are we tuning into here?
I completely understand the skepticism, but the concept, which was pioneered by biologist Rupert Sheldrake, is quite grounded in behavioral science.
Okay.
Sheldrake proposes that there is a universal field of resonance, like a memory bank for nature.
So like cloud storage.
Yes, Think of it exactly as a cloud storage system. It contains biological blueprints, survival instincts, ancestral experiences, and even the collective human genius throughout history.
Wow.
Animals tapping into this field is how a flock of birds turns simultaneously without colliding, or, how a dog knows its owner is coming home before they even turn down the street.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If the morphogenetic field is the cloud and our bones are the antenna, then our biological frequency determines our bandwidth.
Exactly.
The data suggests that when our frequency is low and our cellular water is chaotic, our antenna's bandwidth shrinks.
We can't access the good stuff.
Right. We can only download the most basic heavy data from that cloud. Things like primal survival instincts, fear, and territorial stress.
Yeah.
But as we raise our biological frequency through hardware maintenance, our bandwidth expands. We start downloading high-level data packages.
A profound...
Sudden bursts of intuition, musical genius, or just like a brilliant solution to a problem you've been stuck on for weeks.
And you aren't generating that inspiration out of nowhere in a vacuum. Your hardware is just finely tuned to the frequency required to download it from the field.
That makes so much sense.
And there's a baseline tuning frequency for this entire operation. It's called the Schumann resonance.
Right, the Earth's heartbeat.
Exactly. Earth's atmosphere is constantly struck by lightning, which creates a resonant electromagnetic cavity between the surface and the ionosphere.
Okay.
This creates a natural heartbeat vibrating right around 7.83 hertz.
Yeah.
Our galactic spiral bones are calibrated to perfectly catch this extremely low frequency. It's our reference signal.
But modern life messes with that, right?
Heavily. Modern environments are saturated with artificial Wi-Fi and digital noise, which grounds out that baseline rhythm. Our bones physically struggle to find the baseline.
Wait, so if the bones are the antenna doing all the heavy downloading from the field, what exactly is the brain doing? Because we are so deeply conditioned to believe that our mind is the thing reaching out into the universe.
The biophysics point to a completely different hierarchy. The mind is a user interface, not the primary antenna.
An interface.
Right. Deep inside our bone marrow, and specifically concentrated in the bones of our skull, we have microscopic magnetite crystals.
Magnetite, so they're magnetic.
Very. They act like a biological compass, highly sensitive to shifts in magnetic fields. The conscious mind doesn't pull the raw data from the quantum field.
It just reads it.
Exactly. The mind merely translates the massive, complex quantum data caught by the skeletal system into linear thoughts and feelings that our conscious brain can actually comprehend and act upon.
Wow. So a thought is just the interface displaying what the hardware already downloaded.
Yes.
It's crazy. Thoughts are fleeting, they disappear in milliseconds.
Yeah.
But bone holds its geometric memory for thousands of years.
It's the hard drive.
But let's look deeper into where this processing is happening. Because the research calls the bone marrow the quantum factory.
It really is the ultimate alchemical laboratory of the human body. Bone marrow is where our stem cells are produced.
Okay.
And a stem cell is a blank slate. It hasn't decided if it's going to be a heart cell, a skin cell, or a brain cell.
Right. It can be anything.
In quantum physics terms, these cells exist in a state of superposition. They represent pure, unlimited potential.
And the marrow sits in absolute, total darkness inside the bone cavity, which the source is linked to the quantum observer effect.
Yes. In quantum mechanics, the famous double-slit experiment shows that the mere act of observing a particle forces it to pick a definitive state.
Right.
By existing in total darkness, isolation from the chaotic light and noise of the outside world, the marrow provides a quantum vacuum. It filters out the static, allowing these stem cells to interact purely with the internal electromagnetic frequency you are generating.
Okay, this is where I need to push back a little, because this is the part that might lose some people.
Fair enough.
The research claims that in this dark marrow, DNA emits light particles called biophotons.
Yeah.
And that these biophotons can rewrite epigenetic codes and literally clear out 7 generations of ancestral trauma. I mean, I know some of our listeners are going to roll their eyes at that. How does a particle of light inside a bone actually alter a genetic code? Or are we talking about real biology here, or is this just a poetic metaphor?
It sounds like magic, but it is literal biology. DNA is not just a chemical blueprint, it is an excimer laser.
The laser.
Yes, it absorbs and emits ultra-weak, ultraviolet light. These are the biophotons.
Okay.
Epigenetics shows us that trauma is passed down not by changing the DNA sequence itself, but by attaching chemical tags that turn certain genes on or off.
Oh, right, the expression of the gene.
Exactly. High coherent biophotonic light, which is generated when your structural frequency is optimal, can literally break those chemical bonds. It alters the expression of the gene. So clearing trauma isn't just about going to therapy and talking about it. It involves generating an internal light frequency strong enough to snap the chemical locks left by your ancestors.
This completely upends the modern self-help industry.
Oh, absolutely.
We are constantly told to just change our mindset, think positive thoughts, and, manifest our desires. But trying to raise your frequency with just your mind while your body is inflamed, it's like trying to stream a 4K movie on a broken phone with no antenna.
That's exactly what it is.
You're just endlessly updating the software, but the hardware is totally rusted out. You cannot positively think your way out of a degraded biological antenna.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly explains the phenomenon of burnout.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a high-frequency goal or a spiritual breakthrough in your mind, but your physical hardware is stuck at a low frequency due to toxicity or lack of movement, you create what engineers call an impedance mismatch.
So the resistance doesn't match.
Right. In electrical engineering, if the source and the receiver don't match impedance, the energy bounces back and turns into destructive heat.
Inflammation again.
Yes. In human life, that mismatch causes intense friction. It manifests as endless obstacles, physical exhaustion, and the feeling that you are constantly swimming upstream.
I think everyone has felt that at some point.
But when you finally align your physical hardware with your mental software, the impedance matches. The energy transfers perfectly. That is when life feels frictionless and synchronicities start happening effortlessly.
So what does this all mean for you? We know the mechanics now. You are a walking liquid crystal biophotonic antenna.
Very true.
But how do we practically tune and clean this machine in our daily lives? The research actually provides a maintenance manual for engineering your frequency. And first, we have to charge it.
Building on the piezoelectric effect we discussed, charging requires mechanical pressure.
Right, gravity.
This means controlled weight-bearing exercise. Lifting weights, doing resistance training, or dynamic movement literally compresses the bone crystals to trigger that electrical charge.
So a completely sedentary lifestyle doesn't just make you weak.
No, it means your internal battery goes completely dead.
Wow. Okay, next is calibration. We need specific minerals. And I was surprised to learn that downing calcium supplements isn't the answer.
Calcium alone will just calcify your soft tissue if not directed properly.
Not too bad.
Very bad. To ensure the purity of your internal crystals, you need magnesium, boron, and vitamin K2.
Okay.
But most crucially, you need silica. Silica is a known quantum semiconductor used in all our advanced computer technology.
Oh, like silicon chips.
Exactly. Having bioavailable silica in your diet expands your biological antenna's data processing capacity.
That's amazing.
On the flip side, you must avoid fluoride. Fluoride heavily accumulates in the bones, but it aggressively alters the crystalline structure. It makes the bones dense but brittle, and in terms of electrical frequency, it makes the antenna completely deaf.
We also need to ground the system. Just like any electrical panel in a house needs a ground wire to discharge static.
Making direct physical contact with the earth, like getting barefoot on grass or soil, allows your body to absorb free negative electrons from the Earth's surface.
Like a literal electrical ground.
Yes. This rapidly discharges the static electrical noise building up in your fascia and resynchronizes your biological rhythm with that 7.83 hertz Schumann resonance.
And then there's vibration. Using sound to clean the system. I always thought sound healing was purely psychological.
What most people do.
But the biophysics show that sound travels 12 times faster through solid bone than it does through the air or soft tissue.
Which is why certain frequencies, like 528 hertz or the deep resonance of Tibetan singing bowls, are so physically effective.
They're actually doing mechanical work.
Exactly. They don't just sound soothing to the ear. They act as a mechanical vibration that shakes loose geometric blockages in the cellular water of the skeleton. Even a practice as simple as humming, making a deep, resonant M sound and feeling it vibrate through your jaw and skull acts as an internal sonic bath for your bone marrow.
Finally, we have to detox it. Heavy metals like mercury, aluminum, and lead love to hide deep in the bone marrow and nervous system.
They do.
And from an electrical standpoint, they act like road conductors.
They cause massive short circuits in your body's electromagnetic field.
So how do we get them out?
Using natural binders like zeolite or cilantro helps scrub these out. And you absolutely must keep your lymphatic system moving.
Because it doesn't have a pump.
Exactly. The lymph is your body's cellular drainage system, but unlike the cardiovascular system, it only moves when your muscles physically contract.
Right.
If you don't move, it backs up, creating a highly acidic, toxic sludge that completely blocks your frequency signal.
Listening to all of this, it sounds like we need to radically change how we view
I
ourselves.
think so, yeah.
We need to treat ourselves less like fragile, purely emotional beings who are just tossed around by our feelings, and more like incredibly sophisticated high-tech radio equipment. We literally need to scrub the motherboard and tighten the wiring.
That is the crucial takeaway. When you look at profound states of consciousness, like a Buddhist monk achieving nirvana, it isn't about desperately searching for a new, happy thought to cling to.
It's mechanical.
It is entirely a matter of signal-to-noise ratio. It's about turning down the biological noise through detox, physical silence, and grounding, while simultaneously boosting your signal through piezoelectric charge and structuring your cellular water.
Lower the noise, boost the signal.
Exactly. When the biological noise drops to absolute zero and the electrical signal peaks, you reach the 0 point. You vibrate in perfect, seamless phase with the environment around you.
It is a total paradigm shift. It takes the mystical and makes it rigorously mechanical. And there's one final mind-bending concept derived from our reading that I want to leave you with today.
Oh, this is a good one.
We've talked about how dynamic your biological hardware is while you are alive. But long after we die, our soft tissue, our muscles, our skin, our brain, it all degrades and fades away.
Right.
But our bones, our highly structured crystalline hard drives, preserve our core geometric frequency in the earth for thousands of years.
They hold the record.
So the question I want you to mull over today is this. With every step you take, every posture you hold, and every thought you allow your interface to process today, what frequency are you permanently formatting into your own skeleton for the morphogenetic cloud of the future?
A profound question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep your hardware tuned, and we will catch you next time.